How are you? Welcome back to Love Fashionably podcast. I'm so excited that you joined me again on this Monday night. And whether it's Monday or another night that you're catching up with us, thank you for just tuning in and making time to spend with me. As always, want to start off by saying a big thank you to BGTV Studios for their support and making all of this possible. Without them, there would be no podcast. That is for sure. On a lot of different things, resources, but also just that gentle push to keep me accountable for it. But if you want to know more, check out bgtvstudios.com. BGTV is more than just one or two podcasts. We are a podcast network where there are episodes that are aired every night of the week. Some of them are some nights of the week. There are several of them. I will get my words out today, I promise. But yes, check us out. Also, be sure to like and subscribe on Facebook and YouTube. You are on one of those platforms if you have found this podcast, but there is the other way that you can also tell everybody about YouTube, because that's where they're really easily archived and you can find the playlist. So check that out as well, but also on TikToks, Instagram, all the things. So be sure that you're liking us and sharing. Of course, I have my own Instagram too, so if you want to follow along there as well. But I don't know about you. Getting my words out reminded me. My Monday has been Mondaying. I don't know if you have had a good, easy day. Most of the time when I come in here, it is a pretty typical, it may have been busy, but it's usually been really good. Today was one that I came this close to calling and canceling because I was just I don't know. No, it's just been a day. That's where we're going to leave it. Because I had called, there was something that had kind of come up at work. And so I was talking to several people, kind of just going through processing the situation. And one of my friends was, she was just don't think about it anymore. She's like, if you keep thinking about it, then you're just going to keep letting it steal your day. Which is so true, that when we focus on those negative things, we let it steal the joy of the rest of our day. And I don't know about you, but when they say the devil is in the details, it's it's not so much when news happens, breaking news, this bad thing just happened. It's all the questions that come after it. For me, in my mind, it's 2.5 seconds. I'm at the bottom of the barrel. The worst of the worst has happened, and I'm going to be on the side of the road. Why do we do that to ourselves? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's a girl thing. Our minds just work really fast. I don't know. But it kind of made me even think about this story as I was driving over here. I'd heard it said, this pastor, he was teaching kind of on this concept of what you're thinking about. And he was talking to someone, and they just told him, well, what if? What if the worst happened? And that kind of thought came across my mind, because that's typically what I tend to do. I tend to go to the worst case scenario first. And then I'm oh yeah, it's really not that bad. But it's sometimes you just have to go through that. You're okay, well, what if the worst happened? Well, if the worst happened, God's still going to be there. He's still going to lead me. And it's, in the end, it'll work itself out and probably be okay. But it also made me think of this story in Paul, and this is not at all what I was going to talk about. We'll probably get to, it's kind of a funny story on its own too, and how it all ties in. But it made me think of this story in Acts. So at the end of Acts, Paul, so if you don't know, Paul was originally Saul. He was working for the Roman Empire. He was going out and killing Christians. I believe Roman. I could have said that wrong. But he was working for the people who were against Christians. And he had an encounter with God, just, a quick on the road encounter with God, and his life was forever changed. And he became, you would say a mighty man of God, but that really doesn't even describe all that Paul was and is to us in the Christian faith. But in the end of Acts, he is shipwrecked. So he's in chains, and he's being transported with his fellow prisoners across a lake. I don't remember. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, um, a body of water. He was in a boat, and I imagine this is not a very sturdy boat. Just, made of wood. Big storm came. They're shipwrecked on an island. And when Paul gets to the island, so not only is he in chains, he's been shipwrecked, he swam ashore, and he gets to this island. And it says in Acts 28, verse 1, after we had safely reached land, we discovered that the island we were on was Malta. The people who lived there showed us extraordinary kindness, for they welcomed us around the fire they had built because it was cold and rainy. When Paul had gathered an armful of brushwood and was setting it on the fire, a venomous snake was driven out by the heat and latched onto Paul's hand with its fangs. When the islanders saw the snake dangling from Paul's hand, they said to one another, "No doubt about it, this guy is a murderer. Even though he escaped death at sea, justice has now caught up with him." But Paul shook the snake off, flung it into the fire, and suffered no harm at all. It's just kind of a funny thing, the worst thing for Paul happened. I mean, he's in chains, he's been shipwrecked, he gets to an island, he thinks, oh, I'm going to get warm, and then a venomous snake attaches itself to him, and they're all like, yep, you did it, buddy. We convict you. And he's like, nope, this too, we're just going to shake that right on off. So just kind of thought about that. It's all about your perspective that you have when things come at you. There's always there could always be a bad report. If you look for the bad, you're always going to find it. So, but bad news can come, a bad report can happen. It doesn't mean that we can't feel it and feel the devastation, and have those things that happen, but sometimes you just have to shake it off back into the same fire and know that God's in control and that He has us in all of those moments. All of that was a free side moment from what I originally thought I was going to come here and talk about. It's really funny. Last night I came, or the other night, I came back across this book that I've been reading, and I really like it. It's called When Misfits Become Kings, and I've read it several times, and what I like to do is I like to write down dates. I started this several years ago. When I read a book, I write down the month and the year that I started. Sometimes I'll go back and put when I finish it. Sometimes I start them and don't finish them all the way through. But also, I don't know. I always like to date things. If God tells me something, if I'm taking notes about a message or something, I just always write the date down. And what I've realized is God likes dates. He likes time. He likes order. He likes things in that because he kind of tends to teach you the same things around the same time too sometimes. And it was funny. I picked this book up this weekend, and I was like, I know I've read it a couple of times, and so I went back to look and see, and it said April 2016. I was like, okay. And then it was September 2017, October 2021, and then now I picked it back up in September. A little theme there from September to October, that something that God's wanting to teach me from this book during this time of the year. We just switched seasons from officially. I've been switched since August, but I guess the world's finally on my time clock that we are now officially in fall. The weather still hasn't gotten the memo in Alabama, but hopefully it's going to catch up sooner rather than later. So I will still just sweat to death in my fall clothes. But all that to say, we've had a shift in a transition of seasons, and there's something really special about the fall season, even though it's not necessarily a season where you see physical growth, like when you look outside, everything's kind of dying. I really feel like for me, it's always been like a season of growth and change and a lot of new things that have happened. So it's always really exciting time. And so I just kind of picked this up, and I was looking through it, and like I said, I'd read this back a couple years ago. Well, I'd started it. I didn't finish it that time, and so I didn't make it to this chapter, but I was thinking about this chapter, so I started in this chapter. And it's talking about kind of staying under different levels of authority. when, you're younger, if, you have 2, maybe 3 authorities, that you answer to: your parents, school, so principals and teachers, and if you have a job, someone else there. You think, oh my gosh, life is so hard. I have so many people that I have to attend to. And then you get older and you realize now you have, instead of like a few, you have like many. And not only do you have to abide by many different types of authorities, you are over other people. So like the responsibility is even greater. And then you're like, okay, let's just go back to when we're younger and everything was so much simpler. But in this book, it kind of picks up where we've been talking the last, I don't remember which one it was right now, but when we talked about Elisha and Elijah. And that's kind of where this starts. So just picking up in 1 Kings 19:19, he says, so he, Elijah, departed from there and found Elisha, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him, and he was with the 12. And Elijah passed by him and threw his cloak on him. So remember, he was in the field, he throws the cloak on him, he burns the plow, and he goes after Elijah. But there's this whole, like, in their walk, there's this mentoring phase of where Elijah is teaching Elisha, and Elisha's walking beside him, because Elijah knows that his time on earth is coming to an end, and he's wanting to raise up another leader to kind of help take his place. And the book's kind of talking about, we're going to kind of use it and some other things about like how you'll have a moment and you'll kind of think, okay, I hear you, and you're ready to make it happen right then. So like for Elisha, the throwing of the cloak was basically the mantle of Elijah. He was basically saying, hey, you're about to be the next leader. And what could have happened is he could have taken the cloak and just been like, all right, I got this. Thanks. See you later. And be like, I'm going to go do my own thing. But because I think that's what a lot of us want to do. We just kind of be like, okay, I hear you. So let me go do my own thing. And I want it immediately. I want it now. And we're going to move on. But there's this period that God that gives us is when you can submit to someone, whether it be in a leadership role, in a ministry, whether it be at work. There's lots of different places. Again, like if you are someone, if you're a student, then, learning to submit to your parents will set you up for long-term success, because you're going to learn things that you're not, on how to submit to employers one day, just lots of things. But we'll stop there. But so many times we just want that microwave fix versus the slow cooker. So like I was watching College Game Day the other morning. Yes, College Game Day and Nick Saban. Here we go again. But he was talking about this team, and he was like, they always wanted microwave success. Well, what's he talking about? He's talking about they want instant success, but you don't have what's good and lasting instantly. You have it slowly over time. But on this little journey that Elijah and Elisha take, they go through 4 cities. And these cities have always kind of stuck out to me. And here he's kind of talking about the symbolism of each one of the cities and God's kind of authority kind of hidden behind them. And just to kind of set us up for these, I'm going to read a couple parts in here. He says, the people God gives you as mentors will teach you how to respond to authority. It's important to remember that all authority, Christian and non-Christian, comes from God. The Apostle Paul said, let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of God, and those who resist will bring judgment on themselves. And I kind of just want to stop there because that's a really good word, I thought, just for our culture and where we are in America right now. It's like everybody's wanting you to like pick a side. And while, I have my side and I have strong convictions about that, I have to know and remember that God is the appointer of all authority, and we submit to him above all else. And it goes on to say, this may be hard for someone to hear who is under the authority of someone who doesn't treat them well. Sometimes we have those situations in life. You may be stuck in one of those situations. You may be in a job, and there may be someone that just kind of really has it out for you. And it says, but even if your situation is difficult, that doesn't mean that you are not exactly where you need to be. So many times when those situations are hard, we always quickly look for a way out because we think God can't be in the hard, but he is there. It says that God knows what leaders we need in our life to prepare us for our destiny. And so just kind of in these last few minutes, I want to briefly talk about the places that they go on their journey. The first place they go, and the symbolism in all of these, is Gilgal, and it's the cutting away of flesh. And it's where the Israelites came as they're getting ready to leave the wilderness and go into the promised land. And it was when in 2 Kings... Well, I'm sorry. We'll just... Well, I'll go ahead. Trying to see which word I want to hit. In 2 Kings 2:1, it says, then when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. But Gilgal, like I was saying, it happens when Joshua 2, not chapter 2, but in Joshua 2, that he's about to take them into the promised land, but there has to be this cutting away. And Gilgal represents those parts of us that we have to sometimes cut away, that we don't like to, that it's hard, but we have to allow that process to go in order for God to, again, take us into that purpose that he has for our life. And the second part, or the second place that they encountered, was Bethel, which means house of God. And when I hear that part, the first thing I think about is Jacob. So I love the story of Jacob, and when God's calling Jacob from Jacob to Israel, and he's not ready to accept it, God keeps calling him by his future self, and he's still stuck in his past and still with Jacob. But in Bethel, that's where we see that Jacob encounters God twice there. The first time, as he's passing through, he's on the run from his brother Esau because he just stole his birthright. And he's going through, and he comes to this place, and that's where if you've grown up in church, you may have seen the picture of where he's wrestling God. There's the stairwell, and the angels are going up and down, and Jacob has this moment, and then he wakes up, and at the end, and around verse 19 in chapter 28 in Genesis, he says, how awesome is this place? I have stumbled right into the house of God. This place is a portal at the very gate of heaven. Early in the morning, Jacob took the stone he had under his head, set it up as a pillar, and anointed it by pouring oil on the top of it. He named that place Bethel. And then again, Jacob goes back to that place after he's met Esau. They've reconciled, and it's always kind of stuck out to me as back to Bethel. And that's where he goes back again, and he has this encounter with God. And it really, again, God's kind of taking him, and he's just reminding him of who he is. And he's saying, your name was once Jacob, but no longer. Your new name is Israel. God named him Israel and said to him, I am the God who is more than enough. And that was in Genesis 35. And so just that kind of that place of Bethel, that house of Bethel, the place. So like you go through like a cutting season where you're cutting away things that no longer serve you to pull you into your purpose. And then there's that moment of where you have those encounters with God, because there's that pure, it says, that God loves those that are pure at heart. Well, when we've allowed him to come in and kind of cleanse us from those things that are stopping us and standing in our way between us and him, that's really why he's doing it. That's why there's that cutting away process, is because there's things that are in the way. He just wants that relationship, that encounter like he had with Jacob, but there was always something in the way. Jacob's always like, well, I've got this going on. Remember, I stole the birthright from Esau. Remember all this that I've done? And he keeps trying to place it in there, and God's like, but no, remember, we've already dealt with that. Like, it's time for those moments and those encounters. And I do feel like we are about to run out of time. And so I am going to just go ahead and stop there, because we can talk about the other ones next time. But I feel like that was a good place to kind of zone it in and remember. So, we kind of started off talking about how some days are just a day, and it's all about your perspective and your mind change, and that shows true for Paul. So Paul, kind of bringing it all together here for us, him and Jacob, they had some bad histories, but they both allowed, in the end, both of them allowed that cutting away, that Gilgal moment of where they just let go of the things that were in between them and God, and they had these powerful encounters with God that allows all of us to be forever changed. Jacob is the father, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, father of many nations, kind of how, we're all around here. And then, Paul, he ended up writing so much of the Bible for us and giving us all of these beautiful encounters of things that happened from that time, and then all of these wonderful revelations that God spoke to him. And so what is it, like we were talking about purpose, that there's a point and a reason for all of this? What is it that God's got for you? What is it that purpose and that He's wanting to do in you and for you, but maybe He's just calling you to take that first step? So I hope that made sense. I felt like I was a bit rambling today, so but thanks for joining me again this week. If you got something out of that crazy talk, please let me know in the comments. Share your story with us. You can go to bgtvstudios.com and submit an email. Let us know any prayer requests or anything you have going on. And I hope that you have a great rest of the week. I'm believing in Jesus' name it's going to be a much better week than this Monday. So have a great week, and I'll see you next time.